Thank you for coming. My name is Anita Bldg. I'm the Executive Director of Illinois Church Action on Alcohol and Addiction Problems. And last week, Illinois legislators introduced and quickly passed a bill to legalize video poker machines and internet lottery. And yesterday, the House passed Senate Bill 1298, which legalizes internet gambling on horse racing. Illinois could quickly become the first state in the nation to legalize internet gambling with the lottery, and anyone 18 years of age and older could gamble on horses and the lottery on the internet using a debit or credit card on a computer, in homes, libraries, colleges, cell phones, and Blackberries. In Australia, older gamblers are going without food, medication, and important household services to feed their video poker habits. Research suggests that people gamble close to home, and 80% of the losses come from 20% of the gamblers. We're here today to remind the governor that gambling is an unstable source of revenue that harms individuals, families, and society. A spokesman person for the governor issued a statement saying that Governor Quinn is considering all sides of the issue. So we've invited religious leaders to come here to the Capitol today who are in opposition to this legalization of gambling. And the bishops will then meet with the governor's chief of staff to share their concerns about gambling. At this moment in time, Governor Quinn has a choice to make. Will he side with gambling lobbyists and special interests or with the people? Does he want his future and legacy to be based on the greatest expansion of gambling in Illinois history, or will he step to the plate and find another way? I'd like to introduce our first speaker is Bishop Warren D. Freiheit. He is Bishop of the Central Southern Illinois Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America.
Thank you. I want to thank Anita for organizing this and giving us an opportunity to make our feelings known. I'm also part of a consortium of bishops from the United Methodist Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, and myself. We meet monthly. And as we had lunch last week and came to the realization that this was on the verge of passing, we had incredibly mixed feelings, very negative on the possibility of expanding gambling in the state of Illinois, but also coming together realizing that there needs to be increased revenue to support social ministry in this state, which has really suffered terribly over the last number of years. But this is not the way to do it. My sense is that anything that is done to include and encourage gambling is only going to have reverse effects later on. And the social ministry that I'm so passionate about in this state is going to actually take a real negative hit in the not-too-distant future. I've had in my opportunities as serving as a parish pastor far too many opportunities to counsel with and deal with families whose lives were just totally disrupted by this addiction that is so insidious and so easily hidden. And if people can indeed gamble in their own homes with the help of computers, it's only going to intensify a scourge that continues to just grab families that in unknowing ways. So, yes, I'm very pleased that the state is taking some steps to include revenue and increase revenue. But I would definitely think an income tax increase would be far superior to anything that would involve gambling and the negative effects that it ultimately is going to have on families throughout our state. Individuals, I've dealt with individuals that have lost absolutely everything. Home, families disrupted, reputation, businesses, and it just... it is not even a quick fix. It's a quick disaster from my perspective. So I am definitely looking forward to the opportunity to be in conversation with the Chief of Staff, with Governor Quinn, to see if indeed we can't encourage him at least to perhaps apply an amendatory veto to a portion of a bill that I think is necessary. We need to raise revenue, but not this way. As a matter of fact, I've been at this Capitol on a number of occasions lobbying for increased revenue, but little did I know that it would come to this, and something that would be so devastating and negative for the folks, the people of Illinois. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Reverend Donald Pritchard. He's first Vice President of the Central Illinois District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Thank you, Anita. I, too, would like to express appreciation to you for organizing this event. And I certainly can concur with Bishop Freiheit's words. I'd like to give you a little bit of background information with regard to the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod and our perspective on the whole issue of gambling. We're a church body of about 2.5 million members. We have partner churches worldwide. And we've always opposed gambling and its potential for harm, both to individuals and to families and to society in general. In recent years, the LCMS, known as the Missouri Synod, has made various statements, public statements regarding gambling, from convention resolutions that are opposed, statements by its national president, and has published a number of study materials that are available to pastors and congregations on this subject. In a recent statement from the office of the president, we heard these words: "I would simply ask that all church workers of our synod and our congregation's lay leaders consider how best to communicate the profoundly harmful impact that state-sponsored and legalized gambling is having on our nation and our communities. The problems associated with gambling will only grow worse as gambling continues to gain a foothold in our communities and becomes more commonplace across our nation. We Lutherans know that it is our duty to avoid stealing, but in so doing, to do whatever we can to help our neighbor to improve and protect his property and business. We believe that the Scriptures lead us to a view that gambling is a perversion of God's gracious provision for His people, that it undermines a Christian attitude that God provides all that we need to sustain this body and life, and that gambling can lead to a greater and greater dissatisfaction with God's generosity, no matter how prosperous we may be. Our Synod continues to monitor what is happening in state legislatures and in other venues, and I can assure you that we are pretty much in agreement that this is an evil that we need to stand up and speak against. I only this morning heard the term predatory gambling. This kind of shook me up a little bit, and I look forward to seeing how this slant on the issue is fleshed out as we proceed with our questions and proceed with our meeting with the Chief of Staff of the Governor's Office after this meeting. Thank you.
The next speaker is Reverend Paul Black. He's representing the Bishop of the Illinois Great Rivers Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Illinois Church Action, for putting this press conference together. My name is Paul Black. I am representing Bishop Gregory V. Palmer, who is the Episcopal leader of the Illinois area of the United Methodist Church. That area is comprised of the southern two-thirds of the state. You could pretty well say Interstate 80 South in Illinois, with his office here in Springfield. It is comprised of 150,000 United Methodists in approximately 900 congregations throughout the southern two-thirds of the state. It's always interesting coming to the Capitol and trying to find parking. You all probably have played that game of trying to go around the block and time it just right to get into a parking space. And likewise, today was an adventure to say the least. You know, it's a good day when you can not only find that parking spot, but you also find one that has money already in the meter. It doesn't come out of your pocket. And we have embarked on a new era of governing in recent years where we do not have the courage anymore to stand up and to say that the services and goods that we want, we have to pay for. Instead, what we do is we come up with segmented user fees and other types of revenue sources that tend to prey upon a particular population or a segment of the population. We don't call it a tax increase because if you don't play, you don't pay. And nevertheless, that is where we're at today. A Jewish rabbi by the name of Edwin Friedman talked in a work of his called A Failure of Nerve, in which he says, in highly anxious times, people resort for a quick fix. And part of our problem is that gambling expansion is a quick fix to a problem that didn't occur overnight, and it won't be solved in one day. And so we're here to encourage the governor and the legislative leaders to try again, to move away from quick fixes of gambling to get out of town by the end of the week, and to stay here and actually work on a plan that is equitable and fair. We've had proposals of various kinds be floated related to an income tax. I believe that the governor would need only look back about 20 years to see that one possible option may be floating a temporary income tax if persons are not willing to step up to the plate and make it permanent, which would then allow the candidates for governor in 2010 to then to say on the record where they stand on whether making it temporary or permanent. And obviously, these are difficult times. There is not a lot of fat left to cut. And so when cuts are talked about, we're talking about human lives, families, and persons who at times like this, in tough economic times, there is a greater responsibility for government to step up and to play a part in that process. Thank you.
Tom, did you or John want to speak? So, if you want to, okay. Professor John Kindt from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana.
Well, thank you, Anita. I'm John Kindt, professor from the University of Illinois, and I'm asked upon many occasions to come forward, as well as with my colleagues, and talk about what the statistics show. We've heard that these leaders from around the state express their viewpoint, and I just want to let you know that the academic says they are absolutely right, and it's even worse than what they say. I would like to refresh your memory just briefly and talk about the U.S. National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which was sponsored by our U.S. Senator Paul Simon. And it called for a moratorium, a prohibition on the expansion of any type of gambling anywhere in the United States. This is the federal commission. So why is Illinois even considering expanding gambling? The other thing that the commission said is no gambling on the Internet. We're looking at bills here that are talking about gambling on the Internet. They said recriminalize slot machines, video gambling machines convenient to the public. And yet here we are with a huge gambling expansion bill right here in the state of Illinois. Well, now, here's the Federal Commission report, and we have another report out called the Red Report on Gambling, the Red Flag Report on Gambling, the United States International Gambling Report, with a sponsored and performed in part by a group at the University of Illinois. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages, hundreds of source documents that confirm exactly what the Federal Commission said some years ago. It also calls for a ban on the expansion of gambling and a rollback, a recriminalization of gambling. Why? Because it's hurting our economy. Now, 20 years ago, we were talking about this when the first gambling came to Illinois. And by the way, there's another September 11th, 9/11, 1991, which is when the first gambling riverboat opened here in Illinois. We warned that academics warned that we would be in this budget crisis because of this expansion of gambling. You increase your social services. It's a cost to the taxpayers. The costs in sworn testimony before Congress, table after table, study after study, all the reputable studies say that the costs of gambling are $3, $4, $5 for every $1 in benefits. So if they say we're going to bring in these video gambling machines and they're claiming we're going to have $300 million to play with, Well, the social costs, the increased crime, the increased bankruptcies, the increased addicted gamblers are going to be at least 3 times that amount, or $1 billion worth. So the social costs overwhelm any type of benefits to the state. Oh, and by the way, we don't just have the red flag report on gambling. We have another 1,000 pages of the United States International Gambling Report, which confirmed just what I've said to you here today. And it also lists 150 religious leaders who have had themselves read into the U.S. congressional record saying exactly what these gentlemen said here today, representing denominations throughout the country. Oh, and yes, we even have another 1,000-page volume, a red flag report on gambling. Gambling cannibalizes the local economy, and for each one of these video gambling machines, each one of these slot machines, takes in $100,000 per year on average. That's, with the multiplier effect, $300,000 per year in lost consumer activity. People are not buying cars, refrigerators, and in many instances, they're not buying food and clothing. One study out of Wisconsin indicated that around these gambling facilities, people were spending 10% less on food, 25% less on clothing, 37% bankers had raided their bank accounts in order to gamble. So this is lose-lose for government, it's lose-lose for social services, it's lose-lose for the taxpayers. The costs overwhelm the benefits. And when you take this money out of the economy, you are taking jobs out of the economy. So if they're talking about 10,000 new slot machines or video gambling machines, that's 10,000 new lost jobs per year. Do the math. Slot machines don't create jobs. They take money out of the consumer economy, which costs jobs. 1 lost job per slot machine per year. And that's one reason why these slot machines are known as the crack cocaine, according to the National Commission report and the red flag report on gambling, the crack cocaine of creating new addicted gamblers. Ms. Bldg and these gentlemen are absolutely right when they talk about these social negatives. But I also want to bring to the forefront the fact that this does not help your tax base. It costs jobs, and we have the studies and the documentation to prove it. One final summary out of the Sun-Times here, summarizing a series of articles that they did. This was published May 14. The headline says it all. Legalized video poker would bankroll crime. In these reports, we see a republication of a 10-year study that was published by Harvard and MIT originally, and it said that around these gambling facilities, crime goes up 10% per year. Every year. Taxpayers are going to have to pay for this. So tell us how you're going to pay for all this new crime that's going to be coming to Illinois. And we can go back to 1995 here. Title of this study, Legalized Gambling Activities Subsidized by Taxpayers. The taxpayers are paying for all of this. So what do we do to remedy the situation? We do what Nebraska did. Nebraska has been approached many times to bring in casinos, to bring in video poker, to bring in all kinds of gambling, and they have basically said no. Instead of building casinos, particularly in Omaha, Nebraska, their largest city, what did they do? They ignored the casinos across the river, and they decided we're going to develop our area, and they changed their casino site, potential casino site, which was a former racetrack, into an extension of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, plus a high-tech office park. And I just got a new article here. You can see the private developers are in there investing $300 million, $400 million. They're building, building, building. Why? Because that's how you invest in the future. Let's get back to Economics 101. Let's get rid of the gambling. Let's roll back the gambling. Your financial picture will improve. One last thought. The National Association for Business Economics in the last 48 hours, 90% of the economists in a national press release said the recession will end at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. 90% of the economists said this. Why are we going down the wrong path and pouring gasoline on the fires of recession? We need to roll back the gambling, not increase the gambling. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just open it up to any questions that any of you might have. Yes.
In order to stem the estimated $12 billion deficit and fund a capital plan, the governor and lawmakers have talked about not only the gambling expansion, but also the income tax increase, a variety of different things, including cuts. So if gambling isn't the way to fund that portion, I mean, it's built into a whole series of things that I guess they're looking to use for funding. What do you guys advocate in its place? A bigger income tax increase or more cuts?
Well, we don't advocate anything, but other groups have. And there are other options out there. I remember a few years ago when it looked like gambling was the only thing, and 5 senators went to the president and they said, we will not vote for it. And within 5 minutes, they had an alternative. So I'm sure there are other ways that they can think of. Right now, this is all that they're putting out before the legislators. They're saying, vote on it or you don't get anything in your district. But it takes courage from legislators. It's going to take courage from the governor to stand up for this and do what is right. But that's why we're going to meet, and there are people praying for this governor because they know that he has been boxed in. But it's not the end, because there are ways out, but it's going to take courage and leadership for that.
But you don't have any particular ideas or anything that
Some of the others might,
Okay.
but I'm speaking of our organization.
One of the things that any revenue proposal has is a timetable, and when you talk about that $12 billion hole, it is based upon a certain timetable of so many years, and in so many years.
through the end of fiscal year 2020.
Right. All you'd have to do if to offset the loss of gambling revenue is to extend it out further. Now, will that cost more money long term? Yes. But we do that when we extend mortgages, when we refinance or whatever. You do that in order to come up with a level of where your revenue and your expenditures are palatable. And so we may have to take in and say, instead of at the end of 2011, it may be 2011, 12 or 13. We didn't get into this in 1 year, and we're not going to get out of it in 1 year either.
So what does the state do in the short term then?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of options out there that are available to legislators. I think, as I said, the temporary income tax, obviously Senator Culleton has come out indicating that the income tax has, it's been tough getting enough riders on that to take that to the bank, and he's wanting a bipartisan effort in that. My sense, at least, and I'm not speaking necessarily for the church here, my sense is that a temporary income tax may be more palatable, and perhaps a commitment needs to be made dealing with some of the programs that were initiated by executive fiat by our previous governor, could be rolled back if you're talking about cuts on the other end, and finding that proper balance in that. But it takes time and it takes tough work, and that's what we're here to ask them to do.
I'm one of 3 ELCA bishops in the state of Illinois, and we have gone on record encouraging a real serious consideration of increasing the income tax for that various reason, that it would be a lot quicker and long-term healthy way of raising revenue, as opposed to that which ultimately is going to cost a whole lot more, as gambling will do. So I've already signed a letter, and the letter's been printed in a number of different arenas in the state.
Let me talk about 2 quick things on how to raise revenue. First of all, the licenses for our casinos here in the state of Illinois under the original legislation went for $25,000 apiece in licensing fees. The fair market value of each one of these was approximately $500 million. In testimony here at the legislature, experts flew in and said, hey, the value of these licenses is about $500 million. So right there, that was a $5 billion giveaway to special interests. The other thing is that if you look at the Canada model, Canada pays a management fee to the same companies that operate throughout the United States, casinos, but Canada takes 100% of the revenues coming in. And Illinois, by comparison, started out at 15% to the state and then raised it slightly after we presented this argument, and now has rolled it back again. So the taxes are going down on the casinos. If you want to raise some quick, immediate money, tax the casinos. You don't need to expand gambling, just tax what you already have and follow the Canada model and increase it enormously, and also increase the fees that are paid for the original licenses. This has been a total giveaway to special interest groups and political insiders. And that's another reason why we're in this situation. The other point I would make, back to the economic argument, is that when people are literally taking $2 billion a year is leaving the state by the action of the slot machines in the casinos. That $2 billion translates into $6 billion in lost consumer activity. We lose all that sales tax revenue. We lose the multiplier effect. So over the last 20 years, we have lost $20, $30 billion, and that's a very conservative number, and we've lost all the taxes on that money. So these are some ideas, and it's also good planning for the future. One of the best things you can say for businesses is Illinois is going to clean up its act. We're not going to go down this road anymore. We're not going to cater to special interests.
Do you have any other questions? Thank you for coming.